Thank you, Madame Helga Zepp-LaRouche, for your kind invitation to address this important conference to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Schiller Institute. We have done so much in promoting peace through development and dialogues between civilizations over the past decades. Indeed, the world is faced with many crises and challenges. Nothing more accurately captures the overall mood today than the Munich Security Conference report for the year 2024, entitled Lose-Lose, suggesting that the post-Cold War optimism regarding security and development has dissipated, and much of the world is faced with a situation of lose-lose for all. Is there any possibility to achieve a win-win for all rather than lose-lose for all? And let me draw with this short presentation a comparison between Europe's lose-lose with, from my point of view, Asia's win-win, so to shed some light, hopefully, on this hugely important issue facing mankind today. As far as Europe is concerned, the Ukraine crisis has caused so much human toll and destruction, as well as deep anxieties across Europe, from inflation to human migration, from energy crisis to economic recessions and more. And above all, the loss of peace for Europe. Even the prospect of a nuclear war is a realistic and disturbing concern for many people in Europe today. In contrast, as far as Asia is concerned, especially from what I call the China-ASEAN space, with 2 billion people, or 3 times the population of Europe, this space has enjoyed peace, development, and prosperity for nearly 5 decades, a remarkable win-win in contemporary world history. Facing lose-lose scenarios in much of Europe today, one cannot but ask, at least from a Chinese perspective, a simple and honest question: what the China and ASEAN or China-ASEAN space has done right, and by extrapolation, where Europe may have gone wrong, and they draw some lessons for the world as a whole. To my mind, this space, ASEAN, China, their win-win is attributable to what I call 3+1, or 3 structures plus 1 key factor, namely a development structure, a political security structure, and a cultural civilizational structure, and 1 factor, the China factor. Let me start with the development structure. Different from Europe, whose economic structure is very much politicized, the China-ASEAN space gives a top priority to development per se, which is viewed as the indispensable condition for stability and security and development. This development structure includes well-institutionalized China-ASEAN Free Trade Area and the RCEP, the world's largest free trade area, and the China-led Belt and Road Initiative BRI, and more. This space has now become an epicenter of world economic growth. China alone contributes more than 30% of the world's to world economic growth for close to a decade running. Europe is first in the world to declare a Green Deal with much fanfare, yet how many people still remember that? In contrast, China has completed its Green Deal within a decade through its own down-to-earth model of development, and ASEAN is its main external beneficiary. So Bill Clinton may be right when he said stupid is the economy. Second, political security structure. ASEAN has established the famous ASEAN centrality principle, maintaining non-aligned stance, don't pick sides, actively promoting regional integration and creating a set of dialogue mechanisms for major powers such as 10+1, 10+3, and 10+8, and more. Likewise, fiercely independent itself, China firmly supports the ASEAN centrality principle. China was the first country to join the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, to establish a strategic partnership with ASEAN to sign the protocol of the Treaty on the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone. Third, cultural civilizational structure. China and ASEAN are both committed to building the China-ASEAN community of shared destiny, with emphasis on cultural and civilizational exchanges and on what's called the ASEAN or Asian wisdom, including strategic patience, negotiated solution to territorial and other disputes, role of informal diplomacy, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, adherence to the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, mutual respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty, and non-aggression, non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. And this region, Asia plus ASEAN, China plus ASEAN, reject categorically the so-called liberal hegemony or NATO's expansion into Asia in whatever form. Thanks to the 3 structures, Southeast Asia, often described as the Balkans of Asia, with all its diversities in race, ethnicity, ideology, and political systems, and with its so-called curse of geography, has been turned into a blessing of geography. And this positive trend is now being extended into Central Asia, and its so-called curse of geography is also being changed into a blessing of geography, thanks to the BRI, as this landlocked region is now land-connected and becomes an indispensable bridge between Asia and Europe. As a result, geopolitical dilemma for ages and centuries in this space is now turned into what may be called a new geo-civilization, rather than being pitted against each other. People here share more of the Chinese BRI philosophy, that is, discussing together, building together, and benefiting together. In this context, one may better appreciate Chinese leader Xi Jinping's 3 global initiatives, respectively for development, security, and civilizations, which are based on the successful experience of China, ASEAN, and others, and will inspire many other countries and peoples. As for the one key factor, let me borrow the NATO's phrase, the decisive enabler, not in the NATO sense of accusing China being the decisive enabler of the Ukrainian crisis, which is ridiculous and nonsense, but in the sense of China being the decisive enabler of the win-win for China-ASEAN space and more. Here, I want to make a quick comparison between China and the United States, and their different way of thinking and behavior as big powers. First, the US treats other countries as either a friend or foe, while China, with a much longer time frame as a civilizational state, treating others as a friend or potential friend. Second, China does not have the messianic tradition to convert others or a militarist tradition for conquest, as compared with the United States or the former European powers. The absence of religious wars in China's long history was a source of inspiration for many European Enlightenment giants such as Voltaire, Leibniz, and Spinoza. It reminds me of my debate with Professor Fukuyama, the author of the End of History thesis. The debate took place in the heyday of the Arab Spring in 2011. He predicted China will experience its own version of the Arab Spring. I said no chance, and the Arab Spring will soon become the Arab Winter. Indeed, it became Arab Winter soon, and if Europe could have heeded the counsel of Chinese scholars like me, Europe could have avoided perhaps this tragic refugee crisis and human migration crisis. And third, of all the major powers, China has the highest threshold for the use of force, a great tradition from ancient times of China, from the time of Sun Tzu of 2,500 years ago. When China first tested its nuclear device in 1964, China declared that it will never be the first to use nuclear weapons, nor will it use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear weapon states. If all nuclear powers can emulate China, there will be no danger of nuclear wars in the world. However, civilizational state is first and foremost a modern state with powerful defense capabilities. China has very clear-cut red lines which no foreign country can cross. During the Cold War, there were no hot wars between the United States and USSR, but unfortunately two hot wars between China and the United States, the Korean War in the 1950s and the Vietnam War in the 1960s and 1970s. Not long ago, China testified its ICBM as a stern warning against those trigger-happy warmongers. I myself have long ago coined a concept called Mutually Assured Prosperity, MAP, for the Sino-US relations to replace the outdated Cold War concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD, and now we have every condition to do that. Fourth, China has an overall vision for the world vastly different from that of the United States. China stands for unite and prosper, not divide and rule. China stands for one human community, rejecting categorically the American philosophy of on the table or in the menu. The Schiller Institute has put forward many great projects, such as the Oasis for the Middle East, in part to overcome many crises like illegal whatever, refugee crisis, and more. Technologically speaking, China today has mastered a good number of green technologies to make use of deserts for producing renewable energies for the benefit of mankind. But it's necessary for the regions concerned to develop enough political will so as to achieve meaningful peace and development, or better still, to develop mechanisms similar to the three structures I've just described for China-ASEAN, for development, for political security, for cultural civilizational dialogues, and for this one key factor, that is vision and support from one or two major powers. That's crucial for this kind of projects to be successful. I know this is not easy at all, yet I'm hopeful that this great vision, better for mankind, will become reality one day. With this optimistic note, I complete my speech today, and many thanks again for your patience. Thank you very much.